Welcome to the second episode of Social Arbitrage with myself, Adrien, and Nolan. Today we're super excited to cover some tickers which were suggested by the community, including Ralph Lauren, TPR, Birkenstocks, Bros, the Nintendo Switch 2 launch, and a small preview and review of the recent Netflix earnings, which were super exciting. For this episode, I'm actually not in the regular office. I'm attending an alternative data conference for ticker trends. And Nolan, what have you been up to since the last episode?
I think we swapped places in Florida. Not that close. I had an annual planning for Chewy, so I was in their office is in Fort Lauderdale. I think you're in Miami now, so pretty frigid cold here in Boston. Yeah, I mean, I guess some kind of inauguration thing happened on Monday, but I think we're avoiding that kind of topic today, but I've got plenty of things to dive in here on.
Yes, a lot going on in the political sphere, but with social arbitrage, I think there are quite a few other interesting opportunities. So I guess we can get started with Ralph Lauren. And I wanted to give my quick impression of this because I know it's been a hot discussion in the social arb world of what's been happening with Ralph Lauren. Essentially, this Ralph Lauren trend, just to give a little bit of context, started with some of the trends related to affordable luxury, as well as the old money, more formal dressing trends. This, over the past couple of quarters for Ralph Lauren, has accumulated into significant growth for the brand, where it went from a more relatively stagnant brand into something that is now growing at a far faster rate than it was before. Specifically in the social arb world, this has been picked up a lot because of this high growth rate that it's been able to achieve. However, one thing I wanted to point out on my personal opinion of Ralph Lauren is this current quarter performance compared to prior quarter performance. If you're not aware, in the last quarter of Ralph Lauren, when they announced their results, they had the Ralph Lauren fashion show in the Hamptons, which I'm showing on the screen here. This fashion show event coincided with things like the Olympics, and just generally Ralph Lauren was having a good cultural moment. It was gaining exposure through the Olympics and some of the sponsorships they were doing there, since they sponsored Team USA in the Olympics. And then they also had this Hamptons fashion show, which was going viral on social media. So my personal view on some of the more immediate trends in Ralph Lauren, not so much commenting on the long-term potential of Ralph Lauren, but on this quarter compared to prior quarter, I just personally think that prior quarter gave a lot of social exposure to Ralph Lauren, and it's going to be hard for Ralph Lauren to follow up on that performance in this quarter, since it's not going to have the Olympics, it's not going to have the fashion show, it's not going to have a lot of these things. It will have the holiday season, but I think that's a good starting point to say, how do we think Ralph Lauren is performing from here forward? So I guess what's your view on that, Nolan?
Yeah, let me share my screen here. Let's see if it's the window. But yeah, so this is it's an interesting one. So I think one part that I have one click away from sharing the screen here. Cool. So again, hopefully these weekly meetings aren't only just kind of me to have like a therapy session to go over my trading, but one thing that I've definitely struggled at is knowing when to be exiting a position, and this is one. I think you guys can see the screen. Head nod there, Adrian. Cool. Is that like 13 months ago I felt, and it happened to post it on the 17th of January. 13 months ago I felt late to the RL trade. Glad I jumped in and stayed in. We'll monitor the next month more closely. Still in it for now. So again, still in it for now. And I think again there is definitely some expectations that were quite high. It's an interesting one in our or in the Discord. Some conversations around certain companies where search volume is not quite as tightly correlated with revenue and profit. I think this was kind of one where some of the spikes were there, but again, the degree in which the increase in is not necessarily matched up with some of these the search volume spikes. And these are, for me, this would still be kind of green light level as far as what I'm seeing here. And again, these are just simply me taking some longer tail terms to try to kind of get some of the noise of just our Ralph Lauren ones, so some sizing ones, and then Reddit and things like that. So it's a really quick view. I've had the position for a year, so I've got a number of other as well, but we can kind of leave it there. But I guess you're kind of just pointing a little bit of caution in terms of there's been a number of, I remember the Olympics was a big driver. Even 13 months ago, I felt like I was late to the party, that it could just be a good one to be cautious on is kind of where you're.
Yes, I think that it's all about the saturation of a certain idea. And for Ralph Lauren, well, it's certainly not something that, I don't want to come off as saying that it's not growing or it's not a successful brand. In fact, I really like trading Ralph Lauren because of some of those things. Like it matches up with the old money trends, and it aligns with a lot of what Gen Z really likes on social media. So it's definitely the right brand in the right place, and they're executing on it well, because they're even growing out some of their higher margin segments, like the Purple Label brand, which is their more expensive lines of clothing within Ralph Lauren. So all of those things are doing really, really well. But a great example that I would start to compare this to, and again, the question is, it's similar to what you're asking. It's a question of when, right? Like, when do you determine something to be fully saturated? An example of this that's not Ralph Lauren, which could be similar, is Abercrombie and Hollister, right? That's a brand that has seen explosive growth over the past maybe even over a year and a half now. And so what you start to see is, even if that growth continues, the market has really high expectations for where that's going to go. So the same thing with Ralph Lauren. I think if you're going to be deciding to enter a earnings trade or just a longer term position in it, you need to be really confident in that growth, because if the market did get scared on it, then it just has more potential to be a volatile position, especially around the earnings time.
Completely. Again, I wish I could get a time machine and tell myself that in 2021 there, but when you have some big growth and there's a slowdown, obviously the market responds. So if you've been riding a trend, which again, my effort has been just based on having a full-time job at the fine positions I can be in for beyond a quarter. I do think there's much caution though once you've hit this kind of point in the trajectory here. So
yes,
cool.
It all depends if the market is hesitant if it's going to continue, or really confident if that growth is going to continue. And then that's how I would gauge if it's something that you want to continue holding a position in or not. The next one we can jump into, which is another clothing brand, although I think it's a much more special situation clothing brand than Ralph Lauren, is TPR. So maybe you can start off with TPR and what your thoughts are on Coach and Kate Spade and some of those brands, and also maybe some of the context around the merger getting denied and how the market has reacted to that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely lucked in a little bit with the market. I guess Lena Khan saying they'd be in a monopoly with, was it Michael Kors, I think was they owned Kate Spade. They're going to try to merge with Michael Kors, and again, that would have thrown off the whole universe in terms of competitive handbag space. But the market obviously thought there was an overpayment on the initial price on Michael Kors, so responded. I don't know what the exact price movement was, but it was a lot that first day there, right when the news came out. But it's an area where I've been in this trend for, I don't know where my earliest tweets are, but I know I was on vacation. This is in May when I remember I entered it. So it is one where, again, this kind of lines up with what I call my sweet spot at ones where I feel like I have an edge on. There's the growth trajectory there, and I have a look behind the curtain a little bit of some of these things that are popping off. In particular, one of the areas they've got these little like charms that go on bags. So there's like cherry ones that have been really big. I'm in Boston, and I've even seen like outside of the Garden here, and Jason Tatum is sponsored by Coach as well. So they're trying to expand beyond just the badge. You know, the big part. Probably should know exactly what the breakdown is there. They've got another number of lines. They actually even have one of our next topics we're going to talk about is the what do they call the I'm blanking here. The clog. They've got a clog as well. So they've got a number of things that are working for them. It's a brand that seems to be on the rise. I think it is. You kind of read through Reddit posts. I think it is a brand that's had a little bit of a revival. And I think it's something that could sustains. That's a position I've had for a bit, and I'm still in it now. Again, knowing that I'm not a financial advisor, I'm also bad at knowing when to exit my positions. But I don't know if you want to hop in, Adrien, on your thoughts.
Sure. I'll share some of the data and things that I've seen for this brand. So for TPR, for Tapestry, I thought this was a great example of the market transitioning from caring about one thing to caring about the performance of the brand, right? So the merger was the time where the market was really afraid of that merger going through with Capri Holdings, because from the time that they entered into attempting to merge to the time that it was being fought in court, Capri was becoming exponentially weaker and weaker. So the acquisition actually looked bad for Tapestry. That's why the market was so worried about it, and that kind of depressed the price quite a bit. But also it wasn't trading on the performance of Coach or the growth of Tapestry's brands. It was just trading on if that merger was going to happen or not. So the second that merger ended, then there was a huge opportunity for a repricing of saying, okay, now that we know that this big risk event is kind of gone, how can this business go on in the future? And of course, with Coach and Kate Spade, it's been having really, really strong performance, and now it's also starting to move the market as well. So here on my screen, I'm plotting the Coach.com website traffic, the Coach store and Kate Spade store search interest year over year over time. So you can kind of see that inflection point maybe in beginning of 2023 where it started to grow. I know a lot of people in the social arb community were talking about it, but it still had that looming merger. And so even though the data was turning more positive, the market just wasn't reacting on it. And then you kind of see the second that this merger got denied, it's gone into this repricing in the stock price, where it now cares much more about the actual growth of the brand. And something that this lines up with outside of just Coach and Tapestry that I think is really interesting is the whole thematic trade of affordable luxury. I think within this luxury sector, there's been a lot of really interesting things happening. For example, luxury glasses and Luxottica has done very well, but then other things like LVMH and other large luxury conglomerates are not doing as well. So you have like this sector which is undergoing a lot of change, the luxury sector. And one of those changes is that consumers are very interested increasingly in affordable luxury. And these are things that go all the way from specifically brands like Coach and Kate Spade, which are directly affordable luxury brands, but even secondhand items like things like used purses, used jewelry, used designer clothing. This is something that's also having a strong point right now. So I think when you look at TPR, not only are the brands growing in their existing position, but then you also have this other tailwind of affordable luxury just doing well in general. And I think that's a really interesting sector to look into, even outside of TPR, which is what type of what other companies are benefiting from affordable luxury.
Very interesting. Yeah, my wife, I know she made a comment that at like Bloomingdale's there was some kind of a post about like they were also doing certified used handbag, that I believe is what the brand was. So again, a means in which you can get up something that's nice and show it. It's also interesting in the secular elements of marriage rates in this country, that there's a lot of women with disposable incomes that aren't married, and so that money's going to go somewhere. So I think there's a trend, a couple secular trends that could make that affordable luxury make sense. It's something to go into again. I think the one that's big FOMO one is Abercrombie & Fitch, not really a luxury, but ones that it was pretty obvious as back to school or back to work. Women, I think there was one dress that wasn't particularly, but things that were pretty obvious in hindsight from this extra money that half the population has. And honestly, I don't know what as far as ages 25 to 35, what percentage of earning is female, but it's pretty high.
Right. Yes. I think a lot of spending was coming from those luxury brands potentially and going into those more middle tier brands like Ralph Lauren, like A&F, like TPR, and so it had a big opportunity to attract those consumers who were a little more cost conscious but still wanted to spend money and get things that were trendy and that looked good.
Cool.
The next business that we'll go over is another clothing retail one, which is Birkenstocks. This one is interesting for many reasons, especially just with the entire shoe sector that it's in, with clogs, and even looking at other brands like Crocs, which are starting to slow down a little bit. But there's a lot of competition in this clog sector now. But I think that Birkenstocks has really shown that it has a first mover advantage, and it has definitely quite a bit of brand loyalty, especially with the number of brands that are trying to copy what Birkenstocks does. So what were your thoughts on Birkenstocks, Nolan?
Yeah, let me share the screen. I can resume presenting, but the space I'm somewhat familiar with. It was a competitor to Birkenstock. We have those little white mountain shoes, like this was the agency back 5 years ago or more. So I'm familiar with the space as kind of being a cheaper knockoff of Birkenstock. Obviously, it's a company that goes back to like the 1700s or something like that. I mean, we all know Birkenstocks as being kind of these more, Birkenstocks and socks was kind of like an ugly kind of meme of some sort. But these, as far as shoes, as like an actual fashionable item, I mean, this is just clogs by me stripping out some of these head terms, just like clogs. And again, I don't think there is some search volume for it. I probably should revisit like the word clogs and then the word, probably throw another one in here too, remove the word Crocs as well. But I think like clogs as a fashion statement that is a little bit more, it's suede, it's leather, it's materials like that. There's been good trajectory. You can see, so a thing I often do is take the head term or remove some of the terms I've looked at more specifically, and then take a look at, when I look at the Birkenstock, how much is Birkenstock being the main force to kind of drive up this search volume of the overall space. So I think clogs is overall popular. Birkenstock's going to benefit the most from it. Obviously, we're getting close to the point where you have to start considering how popular are, I don't know the revenue breakdown, but kind of this two-strap, the Birkenstocks you think of, the sandal, which is going to be part of the consideration soon. But as far as clogs, this last quarter, it was high demand for Birkenstock clogs, and again, relative to Uggs, it was up for Uggs relative to the past year, so it could be a nice benefit for Deck as well. But I think there's a couple of fears I have on Deck. Again, I have a position there as well, but I'm going to spend more time, so it should be closer to earnings for them.
Yes, I think Deck is interesting. Maybe we could talk about that in a future episode, actually, because there's so much going on with Deck, and even there. I know there's like controversy even surrounding Uggs, and
the Australian version of it, yeah.
Yes. So I mean, for our viewers, I think if you're interested in diving into a more rabbit hole of events that's going on with a high growth shoe brand, then I think Deck is interesting to look at. To continue a little bit on Uggs, or on Birkenstocks, something that I see with Birkenstocks that I think I've noticed in some other shoe brands like Crocs is I think the market has a little bit of a similar fear with Birkenstocks of having a fad element to it. I think as with any like fashion or clothing or like specific product like clogs and Birkenstocks, there's always a risk that something like that can go out of trend very quickly. So this is one of those companies where I think there's a lot of opportunity to continuously look at the performance over time and pick it off whenever you are really confident that it's doing well. Like if in compared to Ralph Lauren, I think that's something, or A&F, those are things where the market starts to become really confident over time that it's going to keep growing. But then there are other brands like maybe like Deck or like Crocs when it was growing a lot, that each subsequent quarter when it had good performance, the market was surprised every single time because it was so afraid if there was a slowdown, that it would be it would go down just as fast as it went up. So I think with Birkenstocks, you can have a similar interesting situation. And it's also something that's sold through so many different distribution platforms. It's not just through the Birkenstock website. It's not just through their stores. They have a lot of like wholesale distribution to other platforms and shoe places. So I think it's something that is really interesting to continuously track. And the popularity of clogs overall has still been quite strong, at least in my view. Although some of what you're showing, I believe, in your trends, Nolan, looks a little bit weaker in more recent performance. But I think there's still some opportunity in the clog market for there to be more growth, assuming consumers care about having something more like Birkenstocks, which is what I would consider to be like the luxury version of Crocs.
It's hard to get. I mean, coming out of, I've got a number of companies that are kind of actually have positions in, but I have to revisit this post-holiday. Obviously, they all had their big volumes. Lots of sales happened in the week or two after. So you kind of see these inflated numbers. What kind of really matters is checking in to see where are things kind of falling. Now you hit a more normal level in late January, early February. So it is important for me to be a little more diligent in terms of revisiting companies I have positions in to see kind of where we're at. But it is interesting. I mean, it was a pretty steep drop off there of what we're seeing. It looks steep. I guess that's compared to past years and see is that steeper or not that steep. It's an interesting one. As you were sharing, I like to do a quick flashes of like, I always compare California and New York to get an idea of like, California is growing quite a bit, and it's interesting because like it's actually gotten popular in both warm and cold climates, but New York's not quite as extreme. So it's interesting. I often like to see that it's got a little bit more traction in California, and again, people look at celebrities and things like that. The trends can expand beyond there to see. But I think there's an element of kind of gauge just clogs in general, and then so you just see Birkenstock getting a disproportionate amount of it. But I think we are going to come down to it's getting close to being sandal season. That's going to really matter for them. So we'll see how that does.
Yes. I'm very interested to continue to watch their execution. And the next business that I think we can cover, and I think this is in a way I'll try to connect this to Birkenstocks. In some of these trades, maybe even when you compare Deck to Nike, or Birkenstocks to Crocs, or you look at luxury and you see high-end luxury moving to affordable luxury. A lot of the times in these trends, there's like some player that's losing market share, while another player is gaining market share and growing beyond that. So in the same way that Nike customers were transitioning to Decker Outdoors, Crocs customers were transitioning to Birkenstocks, I think Starbucks customers, in a way, were transitioning to Dutch Bros. So I think whenever you see like one of these well-known like blue chip names start to slow down in their growth, there's a big opportunity for these smaller players that are vying for the same customers to come in and kind of supercharge their growth with the customers that are leaving those other businesses. So with Dutch Bros, for me, I wanted to start with that as potentially, part of what's going on there is also a certain level of customers willing to experiment and go to new places just because they don't like the traditional options like Starbucks as much anymore.
Yeah, let me grab the screen share on there because even again, I'm in the Northeast here, as I said. So I'm in Duncan's country, but I have kept a pretty close eye on Dutch Bros since it was another one that I learned from the Dumb Money community when I IPO'd a couple of years ago now. But I mean, here's the Google trends for just Starbucks and the word near. I think a lot of the near me terms have been dropping in general. But Starbucks is kind of wrong direction of a trend. I think there's a number of things that with the stock price or other elements of the Chipotle CEO in place there. So there's a number of things that Starbucks have to overcome. I think they have a disposition that's been strong. So there's a number of, whenever I look for local companies, a number of terms I look at. So the same thing we do for Kava, same thing as, I mean, Chipotle, people kind of know the menus and things like that now, but I think there's kind of certain types of combinations I look at. So this it looks pretty strong as it is. I think it's interesting to kind of see some of the demographic areas of where, or not demographic, but certain states where it's kind of taking hold, or really has come from the Northwest down, if I'm correct there, right, Adrien?
Yes, yes. I think, you know, even outside of consumers moving away from other products, maybe like Starbucks, and exploring more of these new brands. I think something that I've always kept an eye on for Dutch Bros, which I can share here as well, is this term, which I like to watch for Dutch Bros, which is dirty soda. So we actually covered this a while ago, talking about like what the dirty soda trend is, and I believe it originated in Colorado or some specific state. But essentially what this is it's taking soda, like Coca-Cola, and then adding syrup and toppings and candy and sugar, essentially, to the soda. Now, the reason why I think this connects to Dutch Bros is because when you look at a lot of the Dutch Bros products, these are like very sugary drinks. I've tried Dutch Bros, and they have it in Dallas, Texas, where Ticker Trends is based out of. And virtually all of the drinks that they have there are just very sweet, like dessert type drinks. And so I think it very well aligns with this kind of odd, like anti-cultural phenomenon of, instead of people being focused on health, I think if anything, it pushes people to the extremes where, when there's this group of society that cares so much about health, I think there's another group that just says, well, I don't care about it at all, in a way.
Makes sense.
And maybe that's where the dirty soda trend comes in, where it's just like, if I'm going to drink soda, then I want it to taste as sugary and as crazy as I can. And so that means that I'll get, a lot of Dutch Bros every day, and I'll try these different sugary drinks. So I think part of what has propelled Dutch Bros is a little bit of this as well, this dirty soda trend.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, a bit of a reach to connect fashion to food, but I do think the coffee you hold on is in many ways an accessory, and then the conversations you can use as like a conversation starter based off of it and what you have in it. This element of self-expression that could be in there too. Interesting, definitely.
Definitely. I mean, if you look at this reminds me of like the Stanley Cup trend, right? I mean, all that is, yes, exactly. It's exactly what you're saying. I think especially for certain audiences, getting those like collectible Stanley Cups at a certain point in time was also kind of like a status symbol or fashion accessory, to where, maybe now if you're going to work and you have the new Dutch Bros drink of the day or seasonal drink that they're making, like you said, it's like part of you being on trend and being in fashion for the drink and the thing that you're consuming every day, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they've got the benefits of being an experience if you go to it, and then the elements of coffee is a pretty addictive element there. So if it's part of your routine, there's a stickiness to those that you get in there. So cool.
Yes. So next, I think we'll wrap this up with just briefly going over the Switch 2 launch, and then just quickly touching on the Netflix earnings. With the Switch 2 launch, I can start there with that one. My personal opinion on the Switch 2 launch is that, so I think when you look at the market of Nintendo, just the stock price of Nintendo. On the day of the launch, the market moved down a little bit, and now it's been flat for the price of Nintendo. I think what it is the market is just not sure of how this will be received long term by consumers. I think very clearly when you look at the reception of the Switch 2, it's definitely positive. And I think maybe the market will underestimate how an incremental upgrade in hardware and in the product in general is actually well received by Nintendo customers. Because I think unlike other brands, Nintendo is unique where their customers don't just care if the Nintendo Switch 2 has like the best graphics card and the best display and specs and stuff. They kind of just want something that's a little bit better than what they have, and that they can still play the same great games. And I think Nintendo customers more than other customers appreciate familiarity. So in a way, I think this is where there's going to be potentially interesting thing to watch, which is do consumers who have existing Switches, will the new games that are launched with Switch 2 be enough to push them to upgrade to upgrade to the new model? Because I think as long as the games are good enough, then I do think people will upgrade, because this will not have the same backlash as something like the Wii U, which was too much of a change from the base Wii. They kind of got a good increment this time with the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. It's not too different, but now can they just convince consumers to buy the new one? So I think that's where the opportunity will be, especially as we get closer to the actual like pre-orders. And it's one thing to trade it now, but I think there will be you don't want to be too early when they're not even getting pre-orders or sales yet of the console. You want to wait to make sure how it's received even at launch, because a lot can change to that date. Maybe some start shipping and they're faulty components, and then no one wants to buy it anymore. So you have to see what happens in that.
Yeah, I can hop in. So again, I've shared probably too much of my life already, but yeah, I'm a dad. I'm 38. I grew up with a Nintendo 64. Was probably the main. I grew up with an old school Game Boy somewhere behind my desk over there. But so I thought it was gonna be it's actually my second prop for the us chatting. I didn't realize Stanley was gonna make an appearance as well. But so it's something that I'm gonna be deciding. Do I need to get a new one? I don't get a chance to play much at all. But I would say it's got me watching videos. I've watched more videos on video games. I've even like just games I've kind of missed over the years. Like I had Breath of the Wild, the first one, but I haven't gotten the second one, and like things like that. That I think it could just reinvigorate people to the catalog. I mean, again, they sell them at a loss, pretty much, is my understanding, and they'll probably be retailed around $400. So again, like the Google Trends around how much portion of it. And again, a note here, the last 7 days, you do lose some detail in the data. I don't know if Ticker Trends has done something there, but again, I'm sure you couldn't cache all this information. But there's a lot of data and a 7-day view on certain things that you will lose once you get to the 14-day views. 30-day views, I guess, is the next one there. So you lose some detail in the data. But again, this ratio between the Switch games, Switch how much, eventually you're going to be curious on these pre-orders. But I think the reason as to why you want to buy the two, again, you saw at the end of the, seeing the size of the trailer for the actual, I think it was like a 3-minute video there. They did a little bit of the Mario Kart at the end. So I think it's, if you're going to want to play it online with your friends, I think the element of how can they make it a social event that you have to get on it, and they'll make more money off of the actual subscription side of things, where they don't really care on the $400. It's, can you get in and then just get back excited about Nintendo? So we'll see what the game list is, but I think there's definitely a reason to be paying a little attention here. And I do like when investing is fun based on things I'm actually interested in. As much as I like following what handbag my wife has, it's a little more fun to figure out if it's can I justify spending $400 on a. Can I trade my way to buying a Switch? Is kind of usually my goal.
Yes. I think actually you being in that position is a really interesting data point, because I heard when people were discussing the performance of this as well, they were saying, a lot of people with Switches, they have maybe 2 or 3 of them in their household, where maybe they have one for themselves and 1 or 2 for their children. So I think it's almost a bigger decision than just, am I upgrading for myself? It's, do my children need a new one? Do I need a new one? And so maybe like the gauge of the Switch 2 success, we can use that as a odometer, which is, do I just buy a new one but leave my children with the old one? Do I upgrade for everyone? Or do I not upgrade at all for anyone? Right? I think that will ultimately be the odometer for how successful this Switch is. If it can get to the point where it's everyone in the household needs to upgrade, then like that's where the market will be underestimating that.
Yeah, again, I think this is where I'm probably not as great at the demo, is that I think I've had the Switch now for before COVID. I beat Mario Odyssey. I've got like a couple shrines in on Breath of the Wild. I loved Zelda growing up, and I was like, this is too much for me to be like, the commitment level here is too great when I'm trying to trade the market when I'm not working. But I do think it's an interesting. So again, it was just like hard for me to justify a whole new system when I beat 3 or 4 games and only a console for 8 years. But I think the loyalists they're gonna buy them. I think again, we'll see. I think we'll be able to see search volume around subscription costs for online play. Yeah, I mean there'll be all kinds of search volume relating, and add the word Reddit on top of these ones will be really good. So this will be definitely one worth following. It's always been an interesting one in terms of the valuation, where it seems like a pretty cheap company. But these cycles are so vital that they hit them right. So we'll see what happens there. And again, it's the element of perception of the market, thinking that they hit it right or not, and kind of when that timing plays out. So we'll see. It will be an interesting one to keep an eye on. I know we're supposed to not keep an eye on price movement, but we'll be curious on seeing how the market is receiving this one.
Yes. And the last one we can touch on here, just to wrap things up, is Netflix, which just announced earnings yesterday. So Netflix announced record subscriber numbers that were far above the expectations of analysts.
Wow.
There was a good thesis that I recommend people watching this video can check out I think it was in Dumb Money and in Ticker Trends, a thesis about how well Netflix was doing that was posted around December of last year. A big part of this is Netflix going into the live streaming segment, and then also at the same time it coinciding with these other launches like the new Squid Games and other movies and TV shows that have kind of cult followings at the same time. So I think this is my view on this, is that Netflix is the best positioned. I mean, I know Amazon Prime is doing this now too, but leverage live sports to market other products on your platform. So rather than just having people come to pay for a subscription for the live sports, they already have a subscription maybe, and they feel like they're getting additional value, or they're signing up to watch the live event, but then they have access to all this library of attractive content like Squid Games or other things. And so it leaves the customer, I think, for these subscription platforms, if you can create a sense of constant desire to continue the subscription. So, it's not like, oh, there's just going to be a football event and I'm going to cancel it after. But, oh, I need to keep it because after this football event, there's going to be Squid Games and I want to watch that. Everyone's going to be talking about it. Then there's going to be the Jake Paul fight. I want to watch that. Everyone's going to be talking about it. It creates a really high level of stickiness and integrates those people into the Netflix ecosystem. So I think Netflix overall has found like a really good strategy to reignite some of the growth that the market was looking for, and that's why Netflix had such a slump quite a while ago, and now it's really been able to turn around quite a bit.
I'm going to share my screen on this one because I hadn't had a chance to listen to the earnings report or even kind of read the summary of this company I followed. My screen is sharing, right? Yeah. So again, my main thesis, being somebody who pays attention to the market, enjoys our conversations and Discord, but again, I'm not doing too many trades that I'm planning to be in there for less than a week. I'm looking for things that are going to get me at least to 90 days or so of gains. So Netflix has been, so my main thesis has been, or my main kind of like the star that I'm trying to follow is just to not miss an obvious company. I don't want to miss the next Google. I don't want to miss Amazon. I don't want to miss Apple. Fill in the blank of these big companies that I don't want to miss. And Netflix is one where I do feel like I probably bought my first stock in 2016 or so on Robinhood. I don't want to miss Netflix is one that I probably have to say, like, I have missed this one for more than I've been in it over the years. And I got to keep an eye on search volume that are kind of these early, again, how much queries are they, how much are you doing? And they quite clearly, there's a number of spikes that came in there with the live event. I think this is the Jake Paul spike when this one happened. Part I haven't looked at is, and again, I'll take a look at it, is the international subscribers. They've had great growth in Asia Pacific. Do you know, Adrien, did they have a good quarter, particularly in Asia, or was it really just the live events that in the US that got them going? I know they, on Christmas Day, they had the Chiefs game there.
For the specific breakdown of geographic segments, I'm not too familiar with the exact numbers on that. I haven't done a super deep dive.
I was just curious because they've had some good numbers there. Obviously, Squid Game produced in Korea. And again, I think Chris Miller shared it too about this element of dubbing is getting damn good. So they're going to benefit the most from that, where they've kind of got they've got the, like, it's almost like they've kind of planted their flag and then they kind of expand. You plant and land, you plant and expand, where they've got, as far as their country list, I'm sure Amazon's even jealous of kind of how much they've already got this expansion beginning. So they really should be able to take advantage of this. And again, they're really smart when it comes to data, where they're going to spend a ton of money on a Beyonce halftime show on Christmas Day, and then be able to say Squid Game's coming out 2 weeks later, this thing's coming out after that. Again, I'm sure that again, there's a lot of data, but it's a crazy amount of data. You don't think there's a lot of data within a company that's just producing content, but they're very smart about what they're doing, when they're releasing, how they're promoting it. So it is one that I feel like every quarter there's some point where Netflix stock pops 10%. I wish I would have gotten in before then and been more of a set and forget position of really, again, Chris Miller, this long-term social arb, this again, secular thing that you can kind of assess with these alternative data around and just see that's intact. But I think it does kind of connect back to a little bit, if there is a slowdown part that you see, you maybe need to be cautious there on. But I don't think Netflix is a trend. I think Netflix is, the odds are, my 2.5-year-old, when he's 12 and a half, Netflix will probably be the majority of the content you watch. Maybe I'm wrong in saying that, and maybe it will be Disney, but I think it probably will be. And probably not a bad way to be thinking of in terms of investing.
Yes. I think.
Well, thanks for the invested in all the time to think. So watch us.
Yes. I think Netflix is. It's just the thing of owning content and attention. It's another business which does it very well, and I think they just had the long-term foresight in a way to anticipate that scaling up content creation was going to pay off. And then they clearly have a level of appetite for risk, which is what you need in these businesses where now there's so much competition with these other streaming platforms. So I think that's why you see things like the Fubo and Disney deal kind of working itself out. I mean, there's so much pressure with these streaming companies to compete with each other. And so I think Netflix showing strong numbers just puts more pressure on everyone else. I think it's a very interesting segment to watch. For me personally, it's not something that I tend to trade very, very long term.
It's an interesting one. Again, the other part we didn't hit on as much, but like the password sharing crackdowns there have been a couple quarters now where there's been increased crackdown. But it is an interesting one of seeing why this normalizes. Where are people going to just say? And so then for me, I've had a Disney Plus account. I'm going to use it for a whole year. Do you just get lazy and just don't cancel it, or do you get in this habit of how easy it is? Okay, this is the month where I'm going to be on Disney. This is the month I'm going to be on Netflix. This is the month I'm going to be on Paramount, HBO Max, etc. So, but yeah, definitely a space where there's a pretty fierce battle going on of marketing dollars, and investment in content going on for these major players, because it's a big prize.
Yep. There's certainly a big prize in that segment. Awesome, but I think that was a really good overview of a lot of companies and different ways that they're being discussed in society and how their growth is being impacted by different data points. So I'm super excited to continue to make these weekly social arb overviews in the market, take more suggestions from the community, and try to provide just as much value to our viewers as possible, and hopefully just be a part of their research process. So we're not saying one way or the other to either long or short any of these businesses, but we hope to just be one of the data points that you consider when deciding if it's something that's interesting or just a starting point for you to look even deeper and see if there's something interesting that you haven't heard of before in any of the thesis that we've talked about. But definitely make sure to join the Ticker Trends Discord, where there's a lot of great discussion going on, and follow us both on Twitter with the links in the description, where we post constantly throughout the week about some opportunities like the ones we talk about in the video, and even things that don't make it to the weekly overviews.
Yeah, don't be bashful to tag me or DM me on any of the channels there. But yeah, thank you guys, and thank you, Adrien.
Awesome. Thank you so much.